Community. You are listening to Lone Star 4.5 KC and 106. LP Conroe and .com.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Michael Potter. I'm the Extension Horticulture Agent here in Montgomery County. I'm glad to be here today, and such a beautiful day outside. Today we're going to discuss some of the things that are related to Hurricane Harvey that just came through here a couple weeks ago, and some of the impacts that it has, long-lasting, and with your landscapes, with your homes, and some of the resources out there that can kind of help you through some of it. We've still got people that haven't been able to even get to their homes. They're still flooding in certain areas, and a lot of that water hasn't exited some of the areas that are really prone to flooding, just because of low lying and urban sprawl. As things, as we get more and more populated and have more and more concrete around, there's only certain places that water can flow. So anyway, you have situations like that, and of course you have reservoirs and other tributaries, Spring Creek and some of these other creeks that are around here that can cause issues as far as being very large. So a large volume of water goes through those areas. There's some things that kind of recently occurred and events that with all the rainfall that had caused this flooding. So there's always misinformation out there and things that kind of get discussed in the wrong fashion. Today I just want to, if you're one of those people that feel you've been impacted, by, the release of the water from, Conroe or Lake Conroe and downstream, that it's caused these flooding issues. And, there's misinformation out there. A really good source of information I just viewed here a couple of days ago. SJRA is the agency up there, the San Jacinto River Authority. They put a really good video out that gives the information of why they released when they did, why things have to be done a certain way. And there was, representatives from the woodlands up there and some of our county elected officials and Judge Doyle was up there as well. And they basically, have been going through emergency management preparation, and it was a really great video. Really explained why things happen the way they do, and also expressed, for instance, the Lake Creek area, kind of in the western part of Montgomery County. It's a very, very big and very long area where water is caught and then passed downstream. There were some people that were kind of complaining and saying that Lake Conroe had caused that, or at least down the San Jacinto River, when actually it was the Lake Creek watershed that was what impacted them. So anyway, there's some good information there, and I think, just for your viewing pleasure and to kind of get the right information, I think that's a great thing to do, is go to that SJRA, go to their website, the San Jacinto River Authority, go to their website, look at that video. There's some great information on there that really talks about, even from the beginning of the history of how that lake was built and why it was built. And, basically starting with the big droughts in 1950 and basically now, being that lake is not only a recreational lake, that we actually get water that is distributed to woodlands in the Conroe area. So enough about that. We've, like I said, we've still got areas that are in dire need of help, and they still haven't been able to get into some of their homes and of that nature. So, we're looking at a lot of things out there that, we're watching stuff that's actually amazing, how resilient we are in Texas. I've been around and lived different places, and I'm just happy to be a part and live in the community here, to see all the help that's, been extended. Gosh, I don't know, JJ Watt's up to what, 20, 30 million? I don't know. He's doing better than just about everybody else is. I'm just impressed with that man. He is a great icon in our community and doing such great things, and it's going to help our community tremendously. And, it's just, there's so many little stories and things that come out of it, but, and I don't want to overshadow the fact too, that, we've got, from an extension standpoint, we've got some of our coworkers who are basically out of their offices this time. The Harris County Extension office is flooded with about 8 foot of water in its building. So they are being moved around and relocated, and they're going to find out, when they can, actually have an office or how they're going to be able to do their work. It's something that just happens. It's happened here within 10 minutes ago. They had just completed a renovation of the building because of the other flood during the tax day time frame, and now they're without building again. And then we have Victoria County and all the counties within here, down south of us, Aransas County being one of the hardest ones hit. They are not letting their community back into the city at this time just because they can't support them. They don't have the water, the electricity, the sewage, and everything to deal with the people coming back and living in the community. So my thoughts are all out for all those people, all my coworkers and family and et cetera that live down in that area. It's a shame, and catastrophic events like hurricanes unfortunately have displaced a lot of people, and my prayers are with them. And I hope that this recovery happens over a shorter period of time necessary. But now we're looking at Florida. Florida's now bearing down with a hurricane, trying to get things taken care of. So Hurricane Irma's heading up towards that way, and now we have another area of our country that's going to be impacted. And I hope that they all heed the warnings and evacuate and do the things necessary that they need to do. There's some great resources out there for people that have been impacted by these floods. Controlling mold growth after a storm. There's some stuff through our texashelp.tamu.edu. We've got a lot of information on there. Some of it comes from other sources as well, but most of it is the extension disaster recovery information. And like I said, it's Texas Help, all one word, .tamu.edu. There's information on there about what kind of supplies are needed for cleanup after disaster, where you can do donations for supply points for animals. We have an animal hub here in Montgomery County or at the fairgrounds where there's some animals that were taken out of their environment in a sense and having to be relocated because of flooding or potential flooding. Or they've been rescued and then taken to that area so they can be fed and cared for. And in fact, our ag agent is down over there, and I stepped in today to field his position. He was supposed to be speaking today, but I jumped in and said, "Yeah, I'll do it, and I'll help you any way I can," because I know he's been busy with dealing with that issue as far as emergency management when it comes to the animal and livestock. There's a lot of things that Extension does, and that's just one of them. Through our family consumer sciences, they deal a lot with how to prep your food and that information. All those hot topics and things like that are on that texashelp.tamu.edu. And we've also got stuff on our Facebook page that we're reposting from Texas A&M, out of Texas A&M as well, that our researchers and everything have put on there. So, here we are, a week or two after the hurricane, and I don't know, I think most of us that have kind of lost track of time. Yesterday, my wife and I were trying to figure out if it was the 8th or the 15th that was going to be the weekend. So it's one of those things that these things impact our lives. And in Extension, our job is to kind of help you get through these things and provide you information that'll help you. If you're coming in and you finally get into your home and you've got flood damage and everything, we even have information that's written out there that how do you hire or get a qualified contractor to come do mold remediation, especially if your home's been sitting there in water for any length of time at all, or if it just barely got into your home. There's still some remediation that needs to be done, but we've got that out there that can help you choose or get a qualified contractor to do some of that. There's a lot of other information. We've got there's all kinds of things that occur when we have these big flooding events as far as your landscapes are concerned, water sources, even if you have septic tanks or something like those kind of systems on your property. There's some things that need to be taken care of, and we're going to discuss that a little bit today as well. And I'll probably save the horticulture stuff towards the end and work about, talk about landscapes and what can be expected and what kind of things you'll be noticing over the next, couple of weeks to months and beyond. Like I said, these types of events like Hurricane Harvey have a lasting impact. There's communities that are going to be rebuilding for a long period of time. Like in Aransas County, they basically shut all the schools down and said, go find somewhere else to go to school. And it's a shame, but it is something that we can't control. So we'll go ahead and get on to some of the things that are going on in the community. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ag side of it, as far as, private water wells. One of the things, when you have a flood event like this, if your well was flooded, they recommend that you get those water wells tested. You want to get them tested for contamination. Of course, there's different kinds of laboratories and everything that can do that, but you want to get those tested. There's several different websites and areas where you can find that type of information as far as what laboratories provide or analyze drinking water. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they have a website that it's www.tceq.texas.gov. That website has a section you can go to and search for certified labs that will analyze drinking water. That'll help you tremendously as far as making sure that your water source is able to be utilized. And there's also Texas Department of State Health Services as well, www.dshs.texas.gov, and they also have a list of water testing sites. Well, that's some of the things we're going to talk about today. Again, I'm Michael Potter from the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service here in Montgomery County. When we come back, we'll be talking a little bit more about relief efforts. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question, comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station on irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Attention movie lovers, The Ticket Stub is a new radio show servicing Montgomery County that is meant for you. The Ticket Stub is available live every Thursday at noon on FM 104.5 and 106.1, as well as anytime on irlonestar.com. Connor and Dick will let you know what's coming out in the theater, what is worth streaming, and what's going on in the world of film. The Ticket Stub, your home for movie talk.
Alrighty, welcome back. I'm Michael Potter with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, and today we're discussing some of the issues and effects of what Hurricane Harvey had on our area, and trying to kind of work through some of these things. And if you know people that are impacted by this that could use this information, please pass it along. What we recently just discussed was just if you have water wells on your property and they've been flooded or were underwater at some point in time during these floods, make sure you get them tested by an organization or a certified laboratory that can analyze your drinking water. There's contaminants and everything that end up downstream and continue to kind of harbor themselves within our flooded waters, and we want to make sure that your drinking water is safe, and that's one of the things that you can do. And like I said earlier, the www.tceq.texas.org. That's where you can find a list of certified laboratories that samples can be sent to. And of course, all the information on how to collect those samples and everything would be on there as well. All right, and we're going to move on to like wastewater. A lot of our areas, if we have a well, there's most of the time where we have to, and we're not hooked up to the city sewage or county or state sewage system here, so to speak. You've got some kind of wastewater treatment system on your property, a leach field, and other things like septic tank. Yes, the septic tanks. When they get flooded and they overflow, they can, of course, when they overflow, they're going to go somewhere. So you're going to have debris and things that may harbor diseases and other problems that may get into the water system, or at least run downstream or into our creeks and reservoirs. There's some treatment and kind of that goes along with that, with our post-treatment. You got to make sure, of course, make sure all the electrical components are still operating. Typically, when you come in a situation after a flood, you want to be careful for those types of things and make sure you're not trying to touch wires that might still be live. Most of the time, they're not going to be because they were probably turned off or they're damaged in some way. And it's always good to inspect all those things and do that. Every site is going to be a little different as far as what treatments can be done. There's some pre-treatment type things that can be done in the future if you do know that we're going to encounter some floods again. There is a publication through Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service where the title says On-Site Wastewater Treatment Systems Responding to Electrical Power Outages and Floods. And it's the publication number is ER-001. And this publication goes through about, what to do, prepare for the, just in case, prepare for it. And then what do you do after it? Once your, power is restored, of course, number one, get the debris and everything cleaned up around the area, limit your dishwashing or laundry and things of that nature, because you don't know how much, if your water system has been contaminated as well, and that needs to be dealt with first. But once your power is restored, it takes some time and everything for that system to kind of catch back up. You want to make sure that you limit all that water going into that system just so those water levels will stay down and that system can start draining as it should be. So, during a flood, you don't want that system on. You want to maybe cut that circuit panel off and basically stop all use of water. That way it doesn't just continue to cause an issue. So basically don't use the system until after the flood is receded and starting to let that system start to do its job and filter that product through the soil and through the environment. And that's one of the safest things to do. You don't want that floating downstream, and you want to keep that minimized as best you can. So as I said earlier, there's all these resources out there. I've kind of, you can sometimes be underwhelmed, I guess, in a sense, because you know exactly what you're looking for, but there's so many sources out there. And I'm just trying to give people another option. Some are more harder to find than others. When it comes to inside your home, some people have food and items that may be canned or in some type of wrapping. I just was sitting there today and I was looking at some of the information, and some of the stuff I didn't know, but canned goods. Most of the time, what happens is the wrapper, of course, comes off if it's been drenched in water or had any amount of water in it. Trying to, if you're at least able to relabel those containers, you make sure you mark it with a Sharpie and make sure it's labeled correctly. What they do recommend as well is that those containers are cleaned prior to storage. They're sitting in flood waters for any period of time, they'll need to be cleaned, because then that's just another way that you can have harmful bacteria and those types of things come back into your system, as far as your personal system trying to eat things that shouldn't be eaten. So it's best to clean those things. There's a lot of information, like I said. If you go to our Montgomery County website for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, that's montgomery.agrilife.org. We have some hot topics on our webpage that you can get to. There's also the Montgomery County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management link, for future events. There's text messages and things that they send you. What we call in the extension our EDEN, our Extension Disaster Education Network. And we've got, other things for emergency evacuation and shelter-in-place information as well. We put those links on our website so people that are aware of Extension and come to visit us often can get to those things and get to them quickly. The EDEN website is what we call it, the Extension Disaster Education Network. There are publications within that website that address some of the, what do you do with canned foods? What's the first things you need when you re-enter a site? What to be looking for. And at some point, I think most of you've probably seen the news where people have gone back into their homes and they've encounter different critters, alligators, snakes. That's one of the things you need to be very careful of, be aware of, and knowing what types of, being able to identify those snakes is important, because you don't want to get too close to something, or at least, be very careful when you're entering those areas so you don't come across in contact or really make a snake mad, because they're not happy either. There's all kinds of things that occur after these big hurricanes and that come through, insect infestations, animals looking for higher ground, snakes, alligators. I think there was somebody even showed us a couple picture of foxes in their backyard, and some other animals, just trying to find high ground to get away from flood areas. So just do be careful. We don't want the spread of rabies, especially with coyotes and some of the foxes and that nature. I think we had one of our master gardeners that said they had some foxes that actually came up, and their house is kind of probably pretty high on a hill. They said that when they went out, they were just kind of looking around, and they kind of stumbled and realized that there was something there, and they were leaning up against the house just trying to sleep, because they'd been trying to stay out of the water, and that was the only dry place they could find. So they basically stayed in the house and didn't want to go back out after that. But make sure you know how to identify those snakes, what kind of snakes are around our area. Of course, you've got copperheads, you've got cottonmouth, and those are probably the major ones, but there's also rattlesnakes and coral snakes as well. And there was some recent information on the news. Make sure that you can snap a picture or something if you encounter one of those, or if they strike at you. Make sure you know what you're looking at. So just be careful, when you're trying to re-enter areas. And even from now on, even if you weren't impacted by the floods, there's a lot of these critters running around your landscape and trying to stay dry, and so it's best that you just kind of understand what's going on with our environment and just be a little safe. Sometimes it's safer to beat the bushes with a stick than to just walk into the bush. So that way if there's something's there or not. Okay, all right. So as far as when it comes to landscapes, gardens, and lawns, we're gonna get into that here in just a minute, and we're gonna kind of go in more detail than what I've kind of been in with some of the other topics. But I do just want you to know, like I said at the very beginning of the show, the sjra.net is a good source of information to find out why and where the water from Lake Conroe was released, when it was, how it was, and who did it impact, and why certain areas were impacted the way they were. They have some good maps on there that show our watershed, how they do not affect certain areas. So I think it's good information, and I think they do a really good job of getting that information out to us. The other sources of information out there, the texashelp.tamu.edu. That's texashelp.tamu.edu. If you do have information that you need to gather, you can also call our extension office at 936-539-7824. We can get you just about any of the publications you need, or any of the information that you may be looking for. All right. So you can also go to our Montgomery County Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service website. That also has good information on there, links to information on there as well. All right. So when it comes to the home landscape, what do you do? If you've been sitting there and plants have been underwater for a period of time, there are going to be some issues. And typically when plants are sitting there in water, they're going to have root rot issues. They're going to experience some effects that look like nutrient problems. Most of the time, there's some of our plants in the area, especially crepe myrtles, they can withstand a little bit of flooding for the most part. But most of your deciduous plants, typically ones that defoliate during the winter, they will defoliate after a flood, but they will soon put on some new growth. Now, if a tree has been stressed or hurt in the past, this may be the final pushing point to kill that plant. There were quite a few trees, large trees that I saw that were uprooted, fell across roads, etc. And that tends to happen when ground is completely saturated and the roots don't really have anything to hold on to. They basically let up. And also the other fact is that root systems can rot, and so they lose grip and the trees will fall over. Don't prune. If these plants start to lose or defoliate at any point in time, don't prune them. Just let them be for a little while. Be patient. That's one of the things that's very important. You want them to recover. Basically, these plants are starved of oxygen. Oxygen is one of those things, besides the nutrients in the water and the soil that's around them. Oxygen is something that roots need or plants need in order to survive. So we've got to allow those areas to dry out, allow those trees to kind of recover in a sense. So give them some time, just watch them. Within a couple of weeks or so, they'll start to kind of put out some new growth. The buds will start to swell again, and they'll put up some new leaves and of that nature. Now, there are some plants that tend to be a little bit more sensitive. Those are typically plants that are really drought tolerant. They really don't like wet feet, and if they have too much water on them, they'll typically die. Applying fresh mulch. Make sure that's something. My recommendation is let it dry out. We don't really want to keep the water there. We want that soil to dry out. We want those root systems to kind of get back into the swing of things as far as having that oxygen, get back into the production aspect of how do I make that tree happy, or the rest of my leaves and branches. So we want that to occur. So let it dry out. When it comes to your shrubs, there's some other things that can be done within your landscape, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. We're going to be taking a break here in a minute, but I just wanted to cover a few things. Just if you come to an area where you have had the flood, just make sure you're removing the debris out of your landscape, the silt, the branches, things that may have, been left in your yard. Just, be careful. Don't hurt yourself doing things that, trying to grab things without gloves. And, there's a lot of debris that has, nails and screws. And so be real careful. Make sure you wear the right shoes and look for those snakes and those creatures as well. But, try to remove dead, broken limbs, apply fresh mulch. At some point in time, I would go ahead and let those trees and everything kind of dry out, those shrubs dry out, and, wait till we start to have I think we got 10 days of nice, beautiful weather coming up with no rain in sight. So we should have some good weather. So let's see here. What else? Basically, because of the lack of oxygen, those trees get forced into a dormancy, and that's what happens. They go ahead and they drop all their leaves, and then they kind of revive once the soil dries out. So just be patient with them. It's going to take some time. These things always do. Let's see here. Just anticipate the fact that you're going to have some poor growth that comes back. There are going to be maybe a little bit more disease issues with, soil fungus and also, mushrooms. Don't go hit them with a golf club if they start growing up in the yard, because then you'll just spread the spores, encourage more of them. You can remove them and throw them in the trash. Just you make sure that, you're looking for these things. You'll have a lot more leaf blights and other issues like that may occur. So whatever you can do to improve site drainage, that would be greatly benefit the plants. So, all right, we're going to take a break. And again, my name is Michael Potter. I'm the AgriLife Extension agent for Montgomery County. We'll be right back, and we'll finish discussing the plants.
Hey guys, I'm Joey Savage.
Corey DLG.
We are Nerd Thug Radio. Catch us every Monday from 1 to 3 and check out our website, nerdthugradio.com.
We like to talk about quilting, horseback riding, and baking quiche.
Actually, we don't, but we do like talking nerdy to you.
That's right. Every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m., #talking nerdy to you.
Remember to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on your computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. Lone Star Community Radio, broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
All right, welcome back. My name is Michael Potter. I'm here at Lone Star Internet Radio, at Lone Star Community Radio, at 104.5 and 106.1, and at irlonestar.com. Today we're talking a little bit about the effects of Hurricane Harvey and what we can expect as far as what's happening in our landscape. Earlier we talked a little bit about getting the right information, finding out about our watershed through the sjra.net, through their website. They have a lot of great information on there that talks about Lake Conroe and the San Jacinto River, that explains why they have to do what they do and why it's important. That's one good site. If you also go to the texashelp.tamu.edu, there's some good information regarding disaster preparedness, hurricanes, what to do after a flood, how to prepare for those types of events, basically what you need to pack in with you when you can get back to your homes, what kind of things need to be removed, how to take care of those things, how to get qualified personnel or contractors in there to help you renovate your homes and get them back in living condition, and just basically things to be careful of and look out for. Now we're going to be talking a little bit more about the landscape. We've already kind of anticipated the fact that most landscapes will be kind of suffering in some way, shape, or form. A lot of the trees certainly did. We've had several in my neighborhood that fell during the storm just because of waterlogged soils. They just, if they're leaning in one direction and they really can't hold themselves with the root system, they're going to fall. Hopefully not on the house, but sometimes that does happen, and that's just an act of God, so to speak, and not much you can do about those types of things. But, as far as your trees that you typically would plant around your home, your oaks and some of your other things, those would be, just watch them. If they're deciduous type trees, they're going to be losing some leaves. They're going to be, dropping, changing colors. They're just going to have all kinds of little issues that are involved with as much rain as we've had. There's a lot of root, Phytophthora type problems that can occur, crown diseases, root diseases that kind of get amplified with these types of things. The main thing is just let them dry out, be patient with them. Some of the things that can be done to kind of help, especially with smaller type plants, maybe your shrubs around your house or some of your perennials. I've recommended taking like a pitchfork and kind of providing some aeration, poking some holes around the root system. Just be careful you're not damaging the root system. You don't want to try to cut roots or anything of that nature, but you want to at least kind of open the soil up a little bit that you can, maybe even remove the mulch if you can, just to help them dry out a little bit. Most of the time what happens, the soils get almost a compacted structure to them after a flood. So with that said, roots kind of tend to be more stressed. It stresses the plant out as well, so that's when we start to see those symptoms. But the main thing is that the actual amount of water that's around those root systems will cause the lack of oxygen, which makes it even worse. So also the thing you'll notice as well is that if you've encountered a flood area or have had those types of issues, the water and the soil really smells after it recedes. It has a very strong odor to it. That's kind of normal. That will go away as the soil dries out and there's more oxygenation that occurs in there. So it kind of tends to be an anaerobic situation. There's no no air that's in there to help get rid of those odors, so it kind of spoils in a sense. Anytime you have plants, during a recovery situation, trees and shrubs especially, avoid putting fertilizers out there, especially high nitrogen fertilizers or anything else. They do recommend sometimes a light fertilization, but once the soil dries out, just to kind of give the plants a little boost as they start to regrow and produce more leaves. This will help them, but just make sure it's not excessive, especially during the summer months. It's not something you really want to do. But if anything else, if you get to that point, take a soil sample, get one sent off to the laboratory up in Texas A&M to get the soil tested as far as what kind of nutrients your plants needs. That's something that'll help you tremendously. Well, the best thing, we all know this, is the best thing you can do is use some type of organic matter, maybe a compost of some sort. Composts tend to provide nutrients over a slow period of time, increase the soil microbes, and help with the overall health of the plants. So that's something that can be done. And like I said earlier, don't really mulch right off the bat. Let's let it dry out, and just keep in mind, how deep those root systems might be, and how much, how deep they may still be in water for several weeks, just depending on how well it dries out. And like I said, if you can do anything to help that increase by, pitchforking around it, trying to loosen up the soil, that will help drastically as far as having some of those have those plants recover. What about gardens? This was something we had some questions on over the last week or two. If you've had an area where your garden has been basically underwater for a period of time, you need to be very, very careful with that. Food safety is very important. One of my coworkers was supposed to be with me today, and she was going to talk a little bit about that, but that's something that we can talk about as well. Any kind of leafy vegetables or anything, avoid eating them. If they've been impacted by floodwaters, there's no telling what has been in that water as it's come down and settled in your area. So any kind of fruit or anything would not be a good thing to eat, especially if water's sitting for a period of time. Now, if it's just floodwaters where it rises and falls, just make sure you wash those vegetables extremely well. Wash your product very well. But for the most part, think about that from that standpoint. It may not be a good idea to eat those, and just wait till, your fall garden, or even in the spring, then having a new garden then. Some are a little bit less risky than others. There's other things you can do as far as food preparation and taking care of your vegetables. One of the websites that you can visit is foodsafety.gov. There's a lot of information on there on food preparation and safety. Just remember, raw sewage is probably one of the issues that may have occurred if you're in a flood area where water has sat for a period of time. You really just want to be careful and be cautious about gardens. If you had some newly seeded gardens, more than likely those seeds wouldn't have survived. They were probably washed away, if anything. So you still, fortunately, you've still got a little bit of time, growing season, especially for your fall garden. You can probably replant, but let the soil dry out. Let it completely get in there and dry out. That's, we always recommend a good, well-drained soil for gardens. So just remember that some of the issues that can occur, especially with the gardens, just steer clear of vegetables that may have sat in water for over a period of time. It may just be a good idea just to go ahead and till them under and start from scratch. Anything you can do as far as adding organic matter to a garden is something that will help you in the long run anyway. So that's something you can do. When it comes to turf areas, that's kind of a fun situation, because turf is, we always consider it to be a very water-loving part of our landscape. However, there are some grasses that last or are actually able to withstand floods better than others. Bermuda grass can be underwater for about 4 weeks before it's really damaged to the point where it's not going to grow back. So, once it dries out and everything, then grass will regrow. If you've had water not sit on there for a whole long period of time. But Bermuda is one of those ones that can take both the heat stress and of a drought, and then also the amount, any amount of water that floods it. So these are some of the things that you can do in order to help the grass recover. We constantly get grass samples come into our office, people want to know what's going on. And sometimes I get those samples and I look at them and there's not much I can tell from it. However, right now, it's something we just kind of have to be patient with, and we just kind of have to look at it from a standpoint that they're waterlogged. We've had a lot of moisture, 21, 25, 30, 40 inches of rain in some areas. And so there's a lack of oxygen there. First couple of days after the water receded, I'm hoping that, nobody tried to turn on their irrigation systems. Because that's one of the first things you should do is get that irrigation system checked out, get it flushed out, because there's probably sediment and everything that may have occurred, right, especially with those different types of the rotary heads, etc. So, make sure the system is working properly, your irrigation system is working properly. One of the things, that you can do is just let it dry out, just like your trees and shrubs and landscape plants, just let it dry out. One of the things that I like to recommend about every 3 to 5 years, if you have a high traffic area or dog traffic or walking traffic, you may want to consider doing a aeration of your lawn. That will help as far as getting oxygen in there. That's also a good time to add some kind of organic matter that will help as far as a long-term solution for nutrient issues. If I told people that they would never have to fertilize their lawn, that would be a great thing. That would be something that everybody would encourage, because it would save you a lot of money. So one of the things you can do is just, like I said, let it dry out, and then, mow it as is needed. Just make sure you don't scalp it, and more than likely, a lot of these soils are going to be real saturated, and the grass is really not going to be growing just because of the amount of moisture that's still there. As the grass starts to harden back off, you'll start to get that regrowth. Just make sure you don't let it go too long. Just make sure you're not removing any more than 1/3 of the height of the leaf blades. One of the things that you could do, and it's getting to be about that time, as far as a fall fertilization, using low nitrogen, low phosphorus, and low potassium numbers. Just give it, a little shot of fertilizer once it starts to kind of rejuvenate and start growing again. That might help encourage some growth and some root development. And then I kind of wanted to, here in a minute, after we come back from our break, I want to go over a little bit more about sprinkler systems, as far as, some of the more detailed steps of what you need to do about your sprinkler systems at home. So just be patient. And my name is Michael Potter with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, and I'll be back in a moment. Thanks for joining us.
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/ConroeCulture.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? The Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776 with your question. Get seen on TV or YouTube and heard on our podcast, FM, and internet radio. Sponsor your local radio station with Lone Star Community Radio.
All right, welcome back. Michael Potter from the Ag Extension Office here in Montgomery County. Today we're talking a little bit about hurricane recovery and some of the things we can do to ease the pain of all the water that's been around. Hurricane Harvey dropped quite a few inches on our area, and as well as other areas of the state. There's ways we can handle that, and there's things that we can do. There's resources out there for you to get information that you may need. First of all, if you have questions about whether it be agriculture related issues, food related issues, those can all we are horticulture related issues. You can call our office at 936-539-7824, or you can visit our Montgomery County website. And also, we also have a Facebook out there as well. So if you look up for Montgomery County Extension, you can find us out there. We've got information posted regularly on our site, so you can get those links. And one of them is the texashelp.tamu.edu. That's an area where you can find the information that you might be looking for. If not, just give us a call. So we're just kind of finish up today talking about a little bit more about sprinkler systems. I know that I've just recently driving down the road saw some people with their sprinkler systems on, and it just kind of we've had enough water. I don't think we need any more, but we got to find that off button at some point in time. So one of the things, if you had a flood at your house and that system has been underwater, you want to make sure that all that electrical power is turned off to it before you ever get in there and look at it. Open it up, make sure it's all good. Make sure that there's no, burnt wires or that kind of thing. You make sure your clock is still working properly. When you turn it back on, make sure your backflow prevention system is inspected by a professional, especially since it's been underwater for a period of time. We don't want water that's contaminated water out in the yard to come into your household water. So you want to make sure that backflow preventing system is checked and inspected. That's a very important process there. You want to make sure that you shut off your water supply. Open the drain valves, drain the water from underground, drain any water that's in that system. You might actually end up with some movement of soil, and you may end up with some broken pipes. And that right there, that's a good entry point for water that may not need to be there. You want to make sure all your rotors or all your spraying equipment, your nozzles and things like that are in your system. You want to remove all of those. You want them rinsed out. You want to clean them up and get all the debris out of them. And then before you do anything like that, before you ever put those heads back on there, you want to open that system back up and turn it on. And you want to turn turn a station on 4 or 5 minutes at a time. You want to flush good water through there and make sure that system is clean. That also helps as far as, getting the debris, if there's some dirt or anything that clogs up your rotors or your spray heads. So you want to make sure you get that done and get those cleaned out. And then once you run it, for 5 minutes or something like that, you go ahead and put those heads back on there, reinstall the heads, the drain, make sure that's all working properly. See if you have any leaks, check for leaks. If you have a leak somewhere, pipe broken or something make sure you get out there and get that fixed. So, and then when you turn off the water, make sure that all the heads retract. Make sure they go back down underground, especially your lawn ones. There's nothing worse than mowing the lawn one day and not paying attention and running over one of those heads and disintegrating it with the lawnmower. So make sure they all go down properly like they should. But definitely have that backflow prevention valve inspected. You want to make sure that there's not any contaminated water that would enter your home water system. That's why they put those on there, is to keep water like that out. All right. So, salvaging any kind of flooded landscape, it can be quite a chore just from the lack of patience. We tend to want things quicker have things happen quicker than what we expect, or what typically will happen with Mother Nature. So remember your deciduous plants and trees, let those soils dry out. Go ahead and let them lose their leaves. That's okay. It's something that's going to happen. You're going to see more leaf blights and fungal issues that occur. It's just the nature of it. That's what happens when we have as much water in the environment that we do. There's going to be some of those issues, and we just got to let it kind of work its way through it. Even if the tree loses all of its leaves, it should go ahead and reproduce some leaves in the next couple of weeks. And those trees, they may suffer for a year or two, but they should still be okay. Loosen up soil where you can. If you can get in there with a pitchfork or shovel or something like that and just loosen the soil up around their landscape plants, that would be a great benefit to them, just to get the oxygen to them and help that soil dry out. Just be careful you're not damaging any root systems. Be on the lookout for all these other little critters, the snakes and some of the big critters like alligators, and make sure you're paying attention and and make sure you know where you are in a sense and know where they are. And if you have one that you need identified or something like that, you can always send them or call. Excuse me. I don't want you to send them because I don't want you to grab them, but take pictures of them and send those to our office, and we can kind of help you identify them if need be. That way, if it's a good snake or a bad snake. And there's a ton of resources out there, as far as common snakes found in East Texas. If you search that up, and you can look for information out there to find and how to identify some of those. There's also a whole bunch of insect issues that can occur. We've been having a lot of folks bringing in the love bugs. There's a little joke about love bugs. You ask them, what airline do they fly? They fly United. So, because that's the way you typically see them. There's two of them together. So anyway, that's one of the bugs that's that's majorly around right now. One of the facts is you need to, if they get on your car, make sure they're not on your paint, because they can damage your paint. So something to make sure you kind of wash off in a due time. There's things you can do around the house to kind of minimize them as far as their numbers. They're not detrimental in any way, shape, or form as far as causing problems with households or with pets or with anything of that nature. They're just kind of a nuisance to us as far as a visual thing, in their sheer numbers. So if you have ceiling fans or something on the outside porch, if you turn those on, that'll kind of help keep them down or at bay a little bit. There's some, just steer clear of them. There's not much you can do. It's just something that happens. Be on the lookout for worm infestations. I did notice here last week that I was still seeing some of the tropical sod webworms, at least the moth stage of it. So that kind of lets me know that the larval stage should be coming back. And with turf grass being as kind of damaged as it has been, or at least weak as it has been because of the rains, you can expect to see a little bit more damage due to that tropical sod webworm. I'd like to say that the chinch bugs probably floated away, but they might have in some cases, but for the most part, we've seen some damage from chinch bugs. Get out there and make sure you're looking for them. I had some great opportunity to take some cool videos and some pictures here this last week with some samples that some people have brought into our office. They had plenty of chinch bugs running around, all the different stages and everything else, and it was real easy to identify those. And if you have a problem with it, just bear with us. So, we can answer your questions. You call us at the office at 936-539-7824. We have master gardeners up there from 8 to 12 and 1 to 5. We're there to help you and answer your questions and try to point you in the right direction and give you the good research-based information. And lawns are something we all take pride in, and I understand that, but we also got to be good stewards of the land. Go out there, identify what problem you have first before you start going out and putting a pesticide out there that's going to kill a bug that you don't really have. So just some of the things to think about. Be patient with your landscapes, and hopefully, this too shall pass. And my thoughts and prayers are out to all the first responders and all the emergency people that have been out there helping people and getting people through these tough times. I look forward to seeing y'all or hearing from you in the future. Please contact us anytime you get a chance. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks for checking out this podcast of Lone Star Community Radio, Montgomery County's community radio station. If you enjoyed this recording, make sure to check out our past shows online at irlonestar.com or their respective video or podcast formats on YouTube, Google Play, or iTunes. If you have any questions regarding the show, either it being about sponsorships or questions for the host, contact the station manager at dick@irlonestar.com or call the station at 936-647-3776. This show was recorded in downtown Conroe, Texas at the Lone Star Community Radio Studios, and Lone Star Community Radio reserves all rights to this recording and images.